Okay, moving on to the next segment of today's show, I wanted to talk about the first game of the Jimmy V Classic doubleheader, which was between West Virginia and Gonzaga. And I had both of these teams in my preseason Final Four. And this was a game that, to be honest with you guys, going in, I was really excited for because originally it was supposed to be Tennessee playing Gonzaga. It was a crazy setup, but Tennessee had a COVID situation with many in the program, including their head coach, Rick Barnes. And it would have been really exciting to see Tennessee play Gonzaga. Unfortunately, they couldn't. I hope everyone at that Tennessee volunteer program is doing better. Hope to see them on the floor as soon as possible. But West Virginia was a pretty good substitute for Tennessee. They're a legitimately really good team. And we saw them play in South Dakota this past week. I think they're really good. And this was a crazy game. And many things happened throughout the game that, to be honest, by the end of it, I was in like a blur. I was like, wait, did that happen in the same game? But I'm ready to recap it all with you. And let's just face it. This game started the way we all expected it to, by West Virginia really using their physicality. And to be honest with you guys, Drew Timme looked scared. I remember there was a point early in the game when Sheboy and Culver were just going to work time and time again. And I was like, does Gonzaga have to take Drew Timme out of this game? We all know how good he's been throughout the first couple games of the season, but he played scared in the first half against West Virginia on Wednesday in the Jimmy V Classic. But the thing is, we know that Gonzaga is at their best when they play in transition and fast. And I feel like in this game, it was a very unique clash of styles. For the first 10 minutes, it was just a battle of back and forth action. Then we all know what ended up happening to Jalen Suggs. And it looked really bad originally. It looked like he went down with a scary injury. He's the highest ranked recruit to ever come to Gonzaga. He was supposed to be a one and done, a lottery pick type talent, and he has been Gonzaga's best player through the early portion of this season, which is kind of crazy because they had about two guys last year that could have went pro, and they decided to come back with Corey Kispert and Joel Ayayi. We all know ultimately what ended up happening with Philip Petrusev, and I'll just say this: if that kid would have came back to Gonzaga, could you imagine just how good this team would be? But anyways, all of a sudden, Jalen Suggs looked like the best player on this Gonzaga team and one of the best players in college basketball. And it was scary how he went down because he goes down for a rebound and it looks like he twisted his lower leg, but in kind of a weird angle. And I really thought that it was his Achilles and that he was going to be out for the pretty near future. But we thought it was his Achilles, and all of the quote-unquote doctors on Twitter thought it was his Achilles, the same thing. And for me, it got to a point where, honestly, I was just like, who cares about the game? As a college basketball fan, I just want to hope Jalen Suggs is okay. And it did look scary for a while. He kept on grabbing his Achilles. He kept on grabbing it as soon as he left the court. And we all knew this could have been a really scary situation because he could not try to put any weight on it at all as he was leaving the court. He tried to, and it was just evident that he couldn't do it. He had the towel all over his head, and I was really scared. We have seen Kevin Durant trying to battle back from this kind of injury, and we know this is a serious injury that, unfortunately, not a lot of people ever fully recover from. It was just a scary worst case scenario because on one hand, you have to be worried about the kid and his future, and everyone was just going to blast college basketball and say it sucks, it's not worth it, and that the NCAA is just taking advantage of these kids. And you guys know how I feel about it. Is the NCAA perfect? Absolutely not. But it does give kids plenty of exposure, and I feel like that argument was just going to be shoved down my throat about Jalen Suggs with Zion and how when he got hurt at Duke, the argument was being made, oh, he should just never play because it's not worth it to get hurt. I don't think you guys realize just how much work these athletes put in to college basketball, and I feel like for me, that argument and that perception that, college basketball is just worthless, it has to stop because look at my guy Jalen Green right now. What is he doing in that G League? And I'm not ever going to criticize someone else's decisions, but if Jalen Green was playing at a Duke or a Kentucky or a Memphis, do you think his exposure and his stock would be a little bit higher right now if he legitimately is the real deal instead of just practicing 8 to 2:30 and quarantining all day? That isn't ideal. And I feel like when you look at this Gonzaga team, Jalen Suggs is the heart and soul of it, and how they responded after he got hurt was super impressive because you could see Gonzaga were really not themselves after the injury. But on TV, it was weird because as time went on, they would keep on showing Jalen Suggs in the tunnel. And to be honest, when they kept on doing that, I thought, like, what are we doing here? He's out. Like, I just don't want to think about the injury anymore. But then as time went on, he seemed to be getting better and better, doing drills in the hallway. And then all of a sudden, first, he's on the sideline with the towel on his head, screaming in pain, and then in the tunnel in the locker room, working out, and all of a sudden, he then checks into the game, which was pretty crazy. It went from literally, we don't know if this guy is done for the season with a career-altering injury, and all of a sudden, he is back out there and checking into the game. It was really cool to watch. And there were people saying, why would Mark Few put him back in the game? But I think he wanted to play, and the doctor let him play. So why can't he play? That's fine with me. He's tough. This is a kid that really could have played SEC football if he wanted to. He was the Mr. Football in the state of Minnesota, and you could just see with his attitude just how badly he wanted to come back into that game, and I feel like once he did, he was really able to inspire all of his teammates on Gonzaga, and it sparked the team. When he got hurt, the team looked off, and as time went on and things started progressively getting better for Jalen Suggs, the more and more the team looked inspired, and the better and better they played. And ultimately, that's going to be one of the better wins of the season for Gonzaga because let's face facts. Gonzaga plays in the WCC, right? And a lot of times, I'll watch Gonzaga throughout a season, and they'll just look absolutely ridiculously unbeatable. But there is one thing they can control, and that is their conference. That, let's just face facts. The WCC is a good league. I think it's improving. We saw last week what San Francisco was able to do in their big-time victory over Virginia. BYU, we saw them beat St. John's. They're a really good team. Pepperdine took UCLA to triple overtime a couple nights ago, and we know about St. Mary's. So the WCC is a basketball league, I believe, that is very improved, but at the same time, no one's going to argue that it's the SEC. No one's going to argue that it's the ACC. So sometimes a concern for Gonzaga is pre-March. I just don't know if they get that same level of competition. And when they get punched in the mouth in March Madness, sometimes they have a hard time responding. And I feel like for me, watching them in this game against West Virginia, that's basically exactly what happened. They were able to get punched in the mouth. And I know that doesn't sound great, but let's just face facts. This was a gut punch moment if you're a Gonzaga fan. You literally thought one of your best players on the team is going to be out for the season and his career might have been altered. But at the same time, you face adversity, you stick with the process, you get a really good win over a really good West Virginia team, and you get the job done. And here's another thing. How about Andrew Debhart? And this is a guy that I talk a lot about on this show. He was at Florida the last 2 years, and my problem was that even though he was their starting point guard, he played a lot, he never really got better. And he was a guy that declared for the draft 2 times and then pulled out. And when he transferred, I remember saying, if you really want to be an NBA player, going somewhere else is not going to be the answer. You just have to get better. But when he went to the Zags, I thought it was a good fit, especially given the team that has taken some really successful transfer point guards over the last couple of years. Nigel Williams-Goss being a prime example that led this Gonzaga team all the way to the national championship. But here's the problem. I was in it for next year. We didn't realize he was going to receive the waiver and be eligible to play this year. And to be honest, I was concerned about him playing 35 minutes a game at Florida to playing 23 as a backup point guard at Gonzaga. I was curious to see if he was able to come off the bench when he started every game at Florida and adjust to that kind of role. Was he going to buy into the culture? Questions like that. But sometimes you just got to take an L because he was Gonzaga's best player against West Virginia. And it says a lot about Mike White that Andrew Nebhart's the guy that was in his program for 2 years, really just never got better. And all of a sudden, it's clear as day that when he's playing for Mark Few, he's significantly better, significantly more dynamic, and just looks like a smarter basketball player. And he came in after the Jalen Suggs injury and really saved Gonzaga's bacon when they needed someone to step up and take the burden of playmaking over with Jalen Suggs out, and he was able to do that. And he deserves a lot of credit with 19 points, and that was a great win for Gonzaga considering one of their better players got hurt, and the next man up stepped up and really was the star of the game for the Zags. They play Baylor on Saturday. Hopefully Jalen Suggs will play. To be honest, I'm not necessarily sure if it's going to be 100%. If you've dealt with ankle injuries in the past, sometimes when they first happen, it's not as bad, but as time goes on, they swell and swell and swell. So I'm curious to see how they adjust. And right now, to me, these look like the best two teams in college basketball. And oh yeah, they play each other on Saturday. So that is going to be one heck of a game. Gonzaga and Baylor, if there was an NCAA tournament last year, I would have picked this game to be the national championship. So I'm really looking forward to this game on Saturday, and I'll give Gonzaga credit for how they responded after facing adversity.